Welcome to The Longer Game, the only show that's dedicated to the future of retail. We bring on real-life people in the retail industry. We talk about their experiences, we share their stories, we apply it to what's currently going on in the market, and we look towards the future of retail. You could say it's Retail Reimagined. My name is Michael Marr. I run a customized, done-for-you service agency called Cartology that helps brands win on Amazon. Now, while my expertise stems in the Amazon field, we bring on a wide array of guests because retail is expansive. You've got e-commerce. Yes, you've got marketplaces like Amazon. You've also got brick and mortar that is evolving. You've got logistics. You've got technology, finance. There are so many aspects to retail, and it's complicated. So we're here to bring you the entire story. Do you think that you have an interesting story and you'd like to tell it on the podcast? Then go to thelongergame.com and fill out a form to be a guest on the show today. You can catch The Longer Game on any social channels: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and our website, thelongergame.com. We've got all awesome guests on this show, so that I will promise. Are you ready to hear more about the future of retail? Let's get down to business. Hey everybody, welcome to The Longer Game, the podcast where we talk about all things retail. And today on the show, I have Jay Danani with me. He is the CEO and founder of The Starters. They are providing vetted freelance talent for e-commerce companies. He's got a really awesome history, and I'm excited for him to share his story and for us to get into it. So welcome, Jay. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, Michael, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Kind of started my career as a generalist doing consulting, strategy and operations in big tech companies. I worked my way into e-commerce. I first joined Winc, which is a direct-to-consumer wine business operating here out of LA in 2020, right during the onset of the pandemic. And originally joined as head of retention to kind of get all the subscribers that we were acquiring during the pandemic, and alcohol delivery and overall e-commerce was getting super hot, and actually retained those subscribers over a longer period of time. Slowly worked my way through the company over a few years, ultimately serving as their chief marketing officer, running not only the P&L for the direct-to-consumer business, but also the omni-channel growth of our brands that we sold in retail stores like Target, Walmart, etc. I left that role at the start of this year in 2023 to launch my own business called The Starters. We are a curated marketplace of vetted talent specifically for e-commerce businesses. Being a CMO, kind of knew the struggles of one, kind of going to the Upworks and Fiverrs of the world for highly specialized e-commerce roles. Really struggled to find great talent there, and the other end, working with staffing agencies and the markups and the commissions that I was paying on that end. So I wanted to go solve that problem while still staying in the e-commerce space, which I'm really passionate about.
The vetted talent thing is really important too. As an agency owner myself, I mean, we deal specifically with Amazon, so it's a specific skill set, and stuff can be trained. But there's a lot of people that say, "Yeah, I can do that" to get a job, and the reality is they can't always do that. How often is that something that you dealt with at Winc?
Yeah, I mean, the analogy that I'll give is that I hired a marketer through a very popular marketing staffing agency that also services a lot of e-commerce brands and that claimed to have vetted talent. And I was paying the staffing agency $150 an hour, and I thought I was getting senior level talent to run retail ads for us. Turns out he was incredibly junior, had very little experience in what he was doing. And I was asking about his rate. I'm like, you commanded a very high rate, typically commensurate with somebody more senior. He was like, I actually only make $60 an hour. And so I realized they were taking $90 an hour in commissions, not vetting the talent properly at the same time. And so that was my one big aha moment. Of course, in the past, I've tried to start other companies and gone to Upwork to try and hire, and people say they can do it and have a lot of reviews, and it never ends up working out. So our process is very deliberate. Being a CMO in the space, running marketing, creative, technology teams, those are the only roles that we cover, or ones that I've hired for and managed in the past. And I interview everyone myself. We take them through technical assessments, whether written or during a case interview itself. We do references for positions like developers. Our goal is to have the best talent in e-commerce, and everyone on the platform is incredibly hireable and competent. And I want to do that in a way that that without adding the crazy markups, commissions, recruiting fees, etc., that a lot of companies come to experience with a more higher touch, partner. So we've been doing that for about 8 months now, and both our brands as well as the freelancers that do get onto the platform are really enjoying it.
I just had someone on, I just recorded with someone 2 episodes ago, and he was talking about he had worked in both the direct-to-consumer side, like with brands. Also, was running like retail media for the ring company, Quelo. I think I said that right. He said it, and I was like,
Yeah.
I've never known how to actually say that. But his name was Andrew Ferris, and he said
Yeah.
that it's really hard to, and I would agree with this. It's really hard to feel the pain of something when you haven't been through it and experienced it. A good example would be like, I don't know what it's like to give birth, never will, but my wife does, and it's really hard for me to relate to that because I've never done that. But on a more specific level, I know what it's like running an e-commerce business because I did it before I ever started my agency, and it can be tough because you're playing a lot of roles. There's a lot of stuff that you don't know. You're having to try and be a little bit of a jack of all trades, and that can sometimes get you into trouble. So it sounds like you being in that position of, wow, I have someone who's not really who I was told they were. That gives you a little bit more skin in the game, in, for lack of a better term, in this venture with the starters. Am I right?
Yeah, I'd go a step further there, and not only do you have to experience the pain, it has to make you passionate enough about solving that problem and like literally dedicating your life to it. And I've experienced struggle and pain and frustration in other areas of my life, but this was a scenario where I'm like, oh my goodness, like how can there be a company out there that gets away with this?
I'm not laughing at
And
your pain, by the way. I'm just laughing because I've experienced similar stuff to that too. And it's how, what are you going to do?
It's highway robbery. And I'm like, I need to go solve this problem because this is absolutely ridiculous. It's unfair to freelancers because they get their rates compressed. They don't actually make what brands are paying. And it's unfair to brands who are just starting out who don't know better for the most part and think that that's just the going rate for that type of talent when it's really not. So where we pride ourselves in is zero commission, zero markup, zero recruiting fees. The rate that freelancers set is exactly what brands pay. In fact, brands pay them directly. We don't take a cut. And I think that's going to be incredibly important to developing an ecosystem that allows freelancers to get their entire pay, because it's not easy being a freelancer. Work goes up and down. You don't know when you're going to get paid.
Someone can just stop your work right away. Like, hey, I'm done with you.
Yeah, you're taxed 30% by the government. You don't need a marketplace taking another 20 to 50%
Right.
on top of that. So anyway, you can probably tell that, I've gone through the pain, but I also became really passionate about solving that particular problem. It was just incredibly frustrating to see that was the experience that was out there. So yeah, you have to experience the pain, and then it has to make you passionate enough to dedicate prime years of your life to solving that problem.
It's also a little unfortunate for the freelancers that do work at those places, and they are good, because the people that are not are going to, leave a bad taste in the mouth of the customer, partner, whatever you want to call them, the person that's actually buying the services, and they're probably not going to go back there. And that means, less work for the people that can do what they say they can do.
Yeah, even though I run a marketplace in the space, I advocate for freelancers to generate their own demand through social content, being an authority in the space, delivering good work, and getting word of mouth, because that is the only way you're going to be able to raise your rates and raise them continuously. And I think that's incredibly, incredibly important for them as well.
Okay, this might be a crazy question, but if you're charging no fees and people are getting paid what they're getting paid, how do you make money?
Not a crazy question. It's actually a little bit unique. So we run on a membership model. Brands pay for access to the platform.
Okay.
It's $2.95 a month to month. You pay while you're hiring. You hire who you want. Come in, come out. So the goal is to be incredibly affordable for brands, and we help everywhere from the brand that hasn't launched yet, that comes on for a month or two, finds their talent, and then leaves, to multi-billion-dollar SaaS companies that just keep it on as an always-on option to come on and hire talent. We also, over 100 of our freelancers offer free consulting calls to all of our member brands. So just to come on, pick somebody's brain in a particular area, and then maybe they hire them in the future. So we operate on that membership model.
I mean, what you're talking about I'm like thinking, I wonder if this guy has any Amazon people, but because I mean, it sounds really appealing. But what you're talking about with the consulting calls, free consulting calls, that's essentially what a discovery call is for someone who's in sales. Like, I need to know more about what's going on. Maybe I can give you a little bit of advice. I can flex my knowledge muscle on this specific issue or problem, and that tells you, hey, I know a little bit about what I'm talking about, and now I want to bring on and hire you. If it's in the sales process, it's all, I'm going to tell you all about how great I am, and then just hire me because I'm the best. There's no real exchange of information there. It's going to be really hard for someone to trust that. So
Exactly.
what you're doing is basically including part of the sales process into that. So it's not just a quick, who are you? What do you think? Okay, all right, I guess we'll hire you. There's a little bit more thought
Yeah,
into that process.
That's exactly right. Because even the best sales processes are not run like sales processes. Come on, you understand somebody's problems, you add value, and you don't hard sell. And that's exactly what these calls are meant to do. And if it leads to an engagement, great. Like, you showcase your expertise, you help somebody out. Even if it doesn't lead to an engagement immediately with that person now knows you're an authority in the space. They're going to recommend you to someone else. So I'm a big fan of the model. It's exactly what I believe like a sales process should be, where you're adding value, you're not hard selling, and if it works out, it works out. Otherwise, you've developed another relationship in the space that will come back and help you at some point in the future. So I think you hit the nail on the head there.
So I'm not a carpenter, but I sure can hit a nail on the head. Something that you said about adding value is interesting to me because used to think that same like turn of phrase, like adding value. And I heard a guy named Keenan who wrote a book called Gap Selling. It was an incredible book that I read, and that was super helpful for me in the sales process. So much so that I went to their site and read more information and hired one of their trainers to like do one-on-one work with me. And it was incredible. My close rate improved from like 4% to 20%. So it was a pretty big increase. Scott Wiederhold, I'll just give a shout out to my guy, my trainer. He was awesome. But Keenan said something that was really interesting to me, and it was, I don't know if this applies to, or if he was meaning it to apply to SaaS companies or all kinds of companies, but especially like a service-based company. He challenged that thought and said, you don't add value. What you actually do is, because when someone hires you, like someone hires my agency to help them on Amazon, they're actually paying a cost up front. So if we're thinking about value in terms of cash, we're taking value from them. What we do is we help uncover value that's already in your business and turn that into something that really is revenue generating. So for me, it's going into a business and saying, you have a great product, but you're not targeting the right stuff on Amazon. You're not displaying how great that product is. So we're going to help you basically take that coal and turn it into something that it's already got the capability to be a diamond. I'm adding a little bit of embellishment onto this metaphor, analogy, whatever. But basically, we help you uncover the value that's inherent in your business, and that allows you to be successful. But it does come at a cost. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an accurate positioning. I mean, the value ultimately should be there in the product that they're offering, and what you're doing as a partner is helping them unlock that value. So perhaps it's an intrinsic, and you're just helping them unlock that. And I actually really like that more so than like
I stole it from him, so you're welcome to take it from me.
The nuance of the phrase, like the nuance of the phrase, is one thing.
Sure.
I think people probably care less about that, but I really like that as like something to say on a call, because I feel like that definitely helps. That definitely helps close.
It's like the thing that I think sales sometimes gets a bad rap, because you've got people that are basically just saying, "I'm great, look at me," and no one wants to hear that. I also think it's a little bit of a turnoff. Now, however, I'm adamant, and have become more adamant about going after people, whether it's like cold emailing. I haven't really done much cold calling, but cold messaging people. People get really annoyed at that. Like, this person just, pitched me and they don't know me, which is true. Like, if you're just, you could say pitch slap someone, if you're just like, hey, I do this great thing, here's what we do. And it's not really transactional selling. It's not like you're, selling them on telecommunication services or something like that. It does feel a little bit intrusive, But I've also had people who have just come right out and said, "Hey, here's the thing I do. Can we talk more about this?" And I'm like, I do actually have a need. So like, let's talk. And it's turned into something fruitful. So it kind of depends upon the industry you're in and what you're selling. But I'm more adamant now about following up with people and going after them if I really think that there's an opportunity to help them. And that's what it's about. You're going to get a lot of people who say, "No, I'm not interested." Maybe they're just busy that day. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they're probably not thinking as much about it as you are. So if you're going after that person and saying, "Hey, last time we talked, it seemed like you were having a rough day. How are things going today?" Something like that. Or just, "Hey, last time we talked, you said we're interested. Has anything changed?" You thinking that your only opportunity is that one time, I think ultimately does you and that person that you really can help a disservice.
Yeah, that's super interesting actually. And there are so many new methods and channels. For the first time, and I just tweeted about this, I got a PayPal cold message where somebody sent me a penny on PayPal.
I had that happen to me too.
Included their goal. I'm like, this is getting absolutely insane. But what I like to do, I don't do a ton of cold outreach because I've been on the other end of it. And it was just one of those things where like you're getting 100 emails a day, you miss the important ones. So I was slightly annoyed, and I still get a lot of calls too. When somebody is hiring a freelancer and I see that, I provide our freelancer compensation guide, which is like a full report that we came out with. Like, what are the actual rates for all these roles based on experience, based on location, based on talent type, and I just hand that over to them. Whether you hire through us or not, this is what good talent actually charges. So like, don't you get what you pay for? So like, if you go to Upwork and you get somebody for a third of the cost, quarter of the cost, the quality is not going to be there. And if you go to a staffing agency, you can kind of compare this and see how much they're marking up rates. So I just try to add that value, and more often than not, they end up coming back and hiring through us because the value proposition is there, and we added value on the person.
Hey, I'm not going to tell you not to say that. I'm just saying that sometimes like you said, turn of phrase can, or the semantics of things may make a difference. When it comes to talent right now, and what brands are looking for, is there something that's really in demand that maybe has changed over the past year?
Yeah, and this is definitely like a change over the last, I would say, 2 to 3 years. But creative strategists are an incredibly popular role that's coming up. Where over the years, Meta, which is the most popular channel to advertise on for e-commerce brands, has gone from something that is media buying based. So who's the best media buyer? What audiences are we targeting? What bid strategy are we using? It's gone from that to what creative do we have? Because creative is the new targeting. And so people are looking for creative strategists to help them develop compelling ads, both video and static, that have compelling hooks that reach the right audience and that compel them to get the click. So that's been an incredibly popular role, where now every media buyer that I interview, I make sure to ask them, tell me about creative strategy. Like, how involved are you in the process? Give me examples of how you either work with creative strategists or are a creative strategist. What is your process? Because media buyers that can both be in platform and do the media buying, which is becoming more commoditized, but that also have that creative strategist element to them, are incredibly popular and a very much a dual threat. The second piece is around landing page development. Landing pages have become incredibly popular over the last couple of years, that people have realized that sending people to a homepage or a PDP does not convert as high as sending them to a landing page, because that landing page is tailored for that channel, that ad. You have that ad to page relevancy and that particular type of customer. And so I get a lot of requests asking for rockstar landing page designers to come in and design a landing page for them, and then take that to a no-code builder to actually go execute again. So those two roles have become incredibly popular, and have kind of been the types of roles that that bring the most number of customers to us. And so that's been a really interesting shift over the last couple of years, is like not necessarily the actual marketing channel media buying, but the things surrounding it on both ends of the funnel. On one side, the creative strategy for your ads, and on the other side, the landing page website experience to ultimately get that conversion.
That's great. If you work with bigger brands, they've got more capacity, and they've also likely got multiple teams working on things. So you've got a brand team that's focusing on messaging, that's focusing on some of the creative stuff. You've got an ad team, or maybe a marketing team that's focusing on performance. You've got the financial, like you've got all these different competing people that can sometimes butt heads, but they provide a really specific skill set. And so if you're an advertiser and you're not thinking about the hook line, or you're just throwing creative up there that was auto generated or was just the most basic thing, you're forgetting that people purchase and or click because they're engaged in something. And maybe 10 years ago there was a lot less competition, there was a ton of inventory, and so people were, maybe not as much as there's now, but on something like Facebook, customer acquisition cost was really low. Maybe it's $10 to acquire someone. So you could just put out a bunch of ads, you could grow and you could scale. And I was just talking about this with someone earlier today. Now the ante's kind of raised. And so you really have to think about, am I making my buck go as far as I want it to be? And if you're paying for every 1,000 impressions on something like Facebook and you're not getting many clicks, you're not getting much, attention or engagement, you're basically just throwing money down and leaving money on the table, and you're not getting people to where they need to go. So I think that makes a lot of sense that creative would be so important. Had someone on my podcast who focuses on retail with like food and beverage brands, and she said a lot of brands think, okay, I just want to get my product on the shelves, then I'll think about my brand, then I'll think about my packaging. And she says it's the exact wrong way to do it, because people won't pick up your product on the shelf if it's not visually engaging to them.
Yeah, that's exactly, and it's actually really interesting because a lot of those people are actually starting in direct to consumer, and that brand, that packaging works in e-commerce because you have the ability to tell a story through other assets, your website, your ads, your landing pages, etc. Whereas on retail, all you have is the brand and packaging. And in so many instances, like if somebody's scanning a shelf and it doesn't just jump out like what the product is immediately and what the value is behind that product, then you're not going to get the purchase because you don't have the ability to have a landing page around that. Your packaging is your ad, it's your landing page, and it's your packaging all in one. And it makes it incredibly important.
I mean, that's why food beverage brands have people sample in the store too, because maybe the package doesn't jump out. Maybe that's not quite you don't get the engagement that you want, but if someone can taste your product and enjoy the product, they love it. Whereas like fashion, someone that doesn't like the way something looks, like that's it. It's like, that's not for me. I don't like that. So it's very visual. And maybe brands haven't been lazy in the past. I don't think it was ever anything like intentional, but the requirement has changed a little bit. People have to be a little bit more, especially direct to consumer brands, have to be more intentional about what they're doing, because it's a more mature market now.
Yeah, I'll give an example at Winc. So we had a brand called Wonderful Wine Company, and and it was all focused on better for you wine, so lower ABV, no added sugars, organic, biodynamic, depending on the SKU, vegan, and it had done incredibly well when we launched it on Winc.com. We did an email push, we featured it on the site, etc. So well that we're like, okay, let's roll this product out in retail. And we rolled it out into Walmart and I believe a couple other chain stores, and the product just did not sell through at all. Even though people were gobbling it up online, loved it, repeat purchase, it just would not move off of the shelf. And that was kind of learning the hard way. That packaging was so complex. There was so much going on. Like the value props weren't clear. The varietal was one of the smallest things on there, where on the internet you can get away with that because you have kind of your product descriptions and everything surrounding that, but it just didn't translate to the shelf. And we had to kind of do a study, pull the product, rebrand the entire thing, make it incredibly simple and obvious it was what someone was purchasing, and then roll that out again. So we kind of learned that the hard way with one of our products of, this is performing amazing online, but not doing so well in retail. Let's figure out why. And it's because, people would scan right past it. It was so busy. They didn't understand the varietal. They didn't understand the value props. None of it because of all the fancy artwork and design on the label itself. So that was a really interesting experience where you look at it in hindsight, it seems so obvious, right? But when you're actually in it, it's not as obvious, and you kind of have to learn some things the hard way.
You're so close to the work sometimes. There's a reason why people have coaches or they bring in consultants because they're so close to what they're doing, and they might have an area or a skill set where they're an expert, but they're lacking in those other areas. And sometimes, I mean, there's a reason why I've been married for 15 years now. My wife and I have had to go to counseling before because you need a person that's objective, at least a little bit more objective than, a family member or something like that. But I would not recommend that. That's my own personal
Depends
opinion.
on whose side of the family you're using.
Exactly. If your wife's side of the family likes you, then great. If not, I would steer clear of that, and vice versa. But we needed someone that could come in and say, hey, like, have you thought about it like this? That's exactly what a good consultant does. That's exactly what a good therapist does. They help you to come to the realization on your own of what's going on. That's also something that I think is true in the sales process too. A really good salesperson is helping you look at things in a different way. And so if someone's coming to one of your freelancers and saying, and I'm running to this issue, they ask the right questions. It helps them to see, oh, I never thought about it like this. I like this person. There's an instant connection of this person knows what they're talking about because they're helping me to think about things differently. So I'm curious, on this creative side of the wine box, what was it that got you and the team to realize this box is too complex? Like, how did you come to that actual conclusion?
Yeah, it was the bottle and label itself, but it was the data. We put it into stores and it just wasn't selling, and we're like, what is going on? Something is wrong here. So it was the data, and then I kind of had a hypothesis as we were looking at the data. There were a couple of hypotheses floating around. One was that, it's not the stores that we were in were the wrong stores. This is kind of more of like a Venice West Side hippie type of wine because it's better for you, quote unquote, and most of America doesn't care about that. But I didn't really believe that hypothesis because there's so many other incredibly popular brands in similar space, Fitfine being one that I can name off the top of my head,
Sure.
that were doing very well. And you can see in the retail velocity in the Nielsen data that it's actually pulling through shelves. And so thinking about it, I was like, this has to be a label thing, because I look at this and we had this entire concept around like our digital wine shopping experience almost being like a digital wine shelf, and like you look at all the labels and you see which ones customers click the most on and transact on. And so theoretically, like, this would mimic that experience. But in this case in particular, we had just done so much marketing around it outside of just putting it on the site. We did the emails, we did the banners. There was more opportunity to talk about the brand. And I just felt like that wasn't being reflected on the shelves. So really it was the data that was like, okay, this isn't pulling through. And then you address each of the possible issues. It can either just not be the right type of product or value prop, or people don't understand the product and value prop and kind of use logic and reasoning to get to what the core issue is. And then you take your hypothesis, which in my case was this label isn't standing out on the shelf, and then you validate that hypothesis. So we engaged a firm to do a shelf study of consumers kind of looking at a shelf and understanding which products they were pulling and why. And what we saw was that, of course, nobody was pulling this product. But when we then told them about the features and benefits, they're like, oh, if I knew that, I would have bought this product.
Okay, yeah.
And we're like, okay, there we go. So it's actually, the product itself resonates, but we're not unable to get that message across. And so, so using the data, understanding the possible contributions, developing a hypothesis, and then validating that hypothesis was the process that we went through there.
Well, and you already knew the product sold well, like in direct to consumer. So it wasn't like it was, I mean, even if it wasn't like product market fit per se, you already knew the product sold well in general. And it sounds like it was happening across all the stores you went into. It wasn't like one store that was just totally failing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would guess the biggest chain being Walmart would be the bulk of that data. And so that's why like, oh, the people who are buying a product online may not be shopping at Walmart was like the prevailing hypothesis because of that differentiation in audience. But generally, yes, there is a consumer here. And so the question is, do we switch the stores that it's being sold in, or do we rebrand and shift the label? And ultimately the right decision ended up being the latter.
We've touched on omni-channel a little bit. And the whole concept of the longer game is that the future of retail is omni-channel. And I would
Yeah.
arguably say the present of retail is being omni-channel. And I really think it's just because there's so many different shelves, digital shelves, physical shelves. People's customer journey is not linear. It's not just I go here and that's it. You're looking on multiple sites. You're trying to see if there's something that's trustworthy. So there's a lot of different pathways to go, and so you have to be in multiple locations where your consumer is. And I've seen a lot of direct-to-consumer brands start to focus more on a retail or wholesale. Now that people, over the past couple of years have started to get back in stores after the big part of the pandemic, passed on, and that seems to be, I think, working for those brands. It also kind of depends upon the brand too. But what's something that you feel like you got from your experience at Winc, or even anywhere? But it sounds like that was really the bulk of your experience. What did you take away from that about omni-channel? Like, what's something that you learned that you think other brands could really grow from if they heard?
Yeah, I think the big unlock that we were really working on when I decided to move on and launch the starters was I really believe that most food and beverage brands or CPG brands in general, when they are in e-commerce and retail, they're not truly thinking omni-channel, they're thinking multi-channel. And that means that they have one customer journey for online and they have one customer journey for wholesale. One marketing strategy for online, one marketing strategy for wholesale. And I was really looking at ways of like, it's the same consumer. And what you said is exactly right. That process isn't one or the other. It's not linear. It's actually a mix of both. And so how can we take that insight and then develop a marketing and retention strategy as a result? And so some concepts that we were thinking through, proving out and starting to implement is DTC, because majority of purchases happen on shelf, DTC should be thought of as a profitable marketing engine. Typically, your industry incumbents who are not digitally native, they just go on shelves. Marketing is a cost center for them, 10, 15% of expenses. But if you can run DTC ads on Meta, on YouTube, on Google, and generate profitable return on that, but at the same time, less than 1% of people who are seeing your ads are actually purchasing, you're also generating impressions and awareness with millions, tens of millions of people outside of the people who are just purchasing, who are then more likely to, when they see your product on a shelf, pick it up. And the example that I always use in my personal life is I've seen so many Olipop ads online. And I'm like, I'm not spending $60 to get a case of soda shipped to my house. But the first time I saw Olipop in Whole Foods, I'm like, I saw that online. I'm going to go pick this up. So that's one piece of it, of like customer acquisition. How can you tie that together? The second is customer retention. So once, say they buy it online or they buy it in shelf, which is where most of the purchasing happens, how do you get that customer data and that repeat purchase? And the example that I like to use the most here is Quip. I think they've done a fantastic job. They're a toothbrush brand. They started DTC. They're now in Target. And when you pick up a Quip toothbrush off of a shelf in Target, you get a $5 coupon for your next toothbrush head refill online. So then it makes you go online, tell them that you bought your product at Target to insure the product, and now sign up for a subscription online. And that's genius, right? What's the biggest pushback? The pushback is from the retailer saying, okay, well, actually, we want them to come back into our store. And so what did Quip do? They developed a membership and loyalty program where as long as you're brushing your teeth, which they can track every day, you earn points. And those points are redeemed for nothing else but a Target gift card, which is then bringing that person back into the store, keeps the retailer happy. So those are the types of experiences I'm really passionate about. And I think, if more brands can start thinking in that way of how they can tie those journeys together, the level of efficiency when it comes to marketing, customer acquisition, LTV, relative to acquisition costs, goes up significantly.
And just being solutions focused. Like, okay, we've got a problem. Like, let's think of something where everybody wins instead of it being about us versus them. All right, exactly. Jay, if people want to know more about you, this has been awesome. Where would they go to find you? Would you be brushing your teeth at home with your Quip toothbrush? Where would people, if they want to know more, where would they come after you?
I would love to people to find me on Twitter or X at Jay Dolwani. And if you want to see some more of my cringeworthy social content, you can follow me on LinkedIn, but I really don't recommend it.
Oh, okay. That's funny. My daughter says cringe. I don't know if I'm quite at the level to be able to even say cringe. But I think if you're saying cringeworthy, it's probably not that bad. I think most stuff that's cringe is like you don't quite know that it's that bad.
I have a level of self-awareness. I'm kind of like on the on right on the spectrum of millennial and Gen Z.
And Gen Z,
so like
okay.
I feel like I can be cringe, but also understand that I'm being cringe.
That is a very interesting place to be. Well, we appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your experience. It's been great. For everyone out there, hopefully you've learned something from this experience. And I think at the bare minimum, just that you're going to come up with problems being in a retail environment, and you can come up with creative solutions. I think if you're willing to really look at the problem in the face and say, hey, like, we've got a problem. How do we actually fix and address this? And it sounds like brands are doing that. So thanks for coming on. And that's it, everyone. We're done. Get out of here. All right. That was the show. What did you think? That was the longer game. We would love for you to share the show with other people and to leave us a review of the show. So go to iTunes, go to Spotify, you can go to YouTube, comment, leave a review, and share this on any social channels that you are active on and wherever you have influence. We want to share this story and stories like it to as many people as possible. Do you have a compelling story and do you want to come on the podcast and talk about it, and you're in the retail industry, then go to thelongergame.com, fill out a form, and we will contact you about coming on the show. You can find us on any social channels, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and you can go to our website, thelongergame.com, to actually read all of these episodes in blog form in text, because we know not everyone's going to listen. This podcast is brought to you by my agency, Cartology. We are a customized, done-for-you service agency that helps brands win on Amazon. It is super complex selling on the Amazon Marketplace. We help simplify that for you. This podcast is also brought to you by Podcastify Me. They are a full-service podcast production company that designs podcasts around people who are paid for their advice. That is coaches. If you want someone to help create, strategize, and distribute your podcast to the masses, go to podcastify.me to find out more. I've so enjoyed that you've been a part of the conversation and that you've given of your time to hear these people's stories. We'd love for you to share. If you want to find out more, just go to thelongergame.com. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Stay blessed. And until next time, cheers.